Welcome to our TX-KEA Literacy Screener training. My name is Natalie Flores. Mary Allen and I are from the Texas Education Agency, Division of Early Childhood Education. Our goal for this presentation is to help you develop best practices around using screeners such as TX-KEA. We hope that after this training, TX-KEA will feel like an easy-to-use, effective diagnostic screener that can help you inform instruction. Let's review some housekeeping items before we begin. There are two ways you can participate in this training video. Decide for yourself if option 1 or 2 works best for you. For those of you who have decided to follow along using the CLI Engage website, please note we won't be needing it right away. Feel free to minimize that window and we will let you know when it's time to open it up again. You can also feel free to pause this video whenever you'd like. Mary and I will offer some guidance as to when is a good time to pause, specifically around activities. However, it's important to engage with this training at your own pace. You can pause and rewind as much as you see fit. Let's get started. Hold on, so sorry. Mary, I think I can hear the TV in your house.
Okay, let me go turn it down. I'm sorry.
Okay. Welcome to our TX-KEA Literacy Screener training. My name is Natalie Flores. Mary Allen and I are from the Texas Education Agency, Division of Early Childhood Education. Our goal for this presentation is to help you develop best practices around using screeners such as TX-KEA. We hope that after this training, TX-KEA will feel like an easy-to-use, effective diagnostic tool that can help you inform instruction. Let's review some housekeeping items before we begin. There are two ways you can participate in this training video. Decide for yourself if option 1 or 2 works best for you. For those of you who have decided to follow along using the CLI website, please note we won't be needing it right away. Feel free to minimize that window and we'll let you know when it's time to open it up again. You can also feel free to pause this video whenever you'd like. Mary and I will offer some guidance as to when is a good time to pause, specifically around activities. However, it's important to engage with this training at your own pace. You can pause and rewind as much as you see fit. Let's get started. Before we jump into best practices and how-tos, we'd like you to know that although screening and assessment is ideally done in person, it can still be conducted remotely. TX-KEA, which we will focus on today, are offering remote screening guidance and considerations on their respective website. Please note, the processes and best practices of screening do not change whether we decide to administer remotely or in person. As you can see, some upcoming remote screening webinars will be on August 12th for TX-KEA and August 13th for TPRA Tejas Lay. Let's also remember that screening isn't just about compliance either, or checking something off a checklist. It's about gathering important information regarding each student so you can individualize instruction and support them, whether they're physically in your classroom or not. Today's session objectives center around two main goals. Our first goal is supporting educators' understanding of best practices. Our second goal will be showing you how to access and use the CLI Engage platform. This includes spending time discussing how to administer the literacy screener and how to score the spelling section. At the end, we will look at all the resources available within CLI Engage and finish by letting you know about single topic webinars that will be available starting September. These webinars will provide educational videos for you to access throughout the year as it relates to using data-driven instruction in early childhood education. As you can see, our agenda today will focus on three main areas: why screening students is important, how to administer the screener, and what resources are available to use once the data is gathered. So let's begin with the why. Like playtime, meals, and nurture, data in the early grades will transform a child's educational journey. As many of you know, our youngest learners come to us full of potential and eagerness. They come to us needing play, food, and love to grow, as well as a teacher that understands their strengths and needs. While it's our responsibility to support our young students in meeting goals and standards, it's important to remember that we too have standards to meet. Being an educator means continually growing our practice to meet professional, research-based goals. This standard was taken from the NAEYC Professional Standards and Competencies for Early Childhood Educators Handbook. It reads, early childhood educators understand that child observation, documentation, and other forms of assessment are central to the practice of all early childhood professionals. They understand that effective, evidence-based teaching is informed by thoughtful, ongoing, systematic observation and documentation of each child's learning progress, qualities, strengths, interests, and needs. We hope you're able to share this meaningful quote with your teaching team come start of school. For a moment, let's envision the exponential growth our students could gain if one tool could help us with the following: collecting accurate data about our students that can be used to immediately inform instruction, gathering data from families which can help us paint a whole image of the child across settings such as home and school, and help us plan interventions based on collected data to close learning gaps. To realize this vision of exponential growth, it's important that we use high-quality tools to support our practice. That said, given the uncertainties of school disruptions in the upcoming 2020-2021 school year, it is now more important than ever that educators have reliable, multidimensional assessment tools to support their practice. Ones that provide accurate, meaningful information, and ones that can help teachers communicate effectively with families. It's also important to note that TX-KEA is currently unveiling ways to address issues of remote screening, so keep that in mind as you view this presentation. Let's move on to exploring how to use collected data to drive your instruction. Another way to phrase this practice is called data-driven instruction. Here's an example of an activity that you can try with your teaching team or yourself to get started in thinking about data-driven instruction. Take a moment to think about some items that you assess daily in your own life. For example, you can consider weight. I weigh myself every morning, but if I do nothing with that data by making a plan or intervening with different menus, the scale number doesn't change. But if I do adjust what I eat and how I exercise, my outcome is different. I use scale information to then make informed decisions to get me closer to meeting my goals. Another example is that I measure the amount of gas in my tank. Once I fill up my tank, my assessment isn't finished. I continue to check in on my gas levels regularly so I don't run out. Now let's think about other professions we rely on every day to gather and use data in meaningful ways. Some examples are doctors who check symptoms while also listening to the patient to gather formative data, grocers who must make sure produce and sell-by dates are all fresh. I'm sure we all choose a milk carton by the sell-by date. Again, these are all examples of using data to inform your decisions. Mechanics must also listen. They check and then act to make sure that they fix the problem we may have with our cars. It's important to remember that stakeholders in education expect our profession to gather and use data to assist children in growing and learning. This does not mean we only practice assessment once or twice a year. It means continually collecting data to adjust instruction in meaningful ways. As we embark on learning about TX-KEA as a particular tool, we are also going to provide information and opportunities for you to understand the importance of accurate data and how to use it to meet students where they are so that their skills improve. Feel free to pause this video here if you'd like to engage in your own discussion. The term data-driven instruction refers to when educators use information collected from screeners and other assessments to make informed decisions about how to adjust their instruction. Keep in mind, data collected outside of screeners can also be used to inform instruction. such as collecting data on student interests. For example, what are your students' favorite outdoor activities? Do the children in your classroom have a favorite movie in common? Throughout this presentation, consider how you can use these interest-driven data points to inform instruction too. Let's take a brief moment to press pause and prepare ourselves for a stop and jot, where we quickly write down our thoughts or at least consider them. We have been using the term data a lot in this presentation and will continue to do so. But for now, let's pause and reflect on what data actually is and how it's meaningful to you. As previously noted, the term data refers to information collected. More specifically, in this presentation, data means the information you've collected by using an assessment tool such as TX-KEA. Take a few moments to reflect on what data you find most meaningful to your practice. It can be data collected from screeners such as TX-KEA, parent questionnaires, student work samples, observations, etc. As you reflect and write, consider what meaningful data looks like to you and why it's important. You can hit play on the video whenever you're ready to resume the training. Now that we've considered what highly meaningful data looks like and why it's important to you, let's apply those thoughts to the data cycle. The data cycle is a helpful way to visualize how data, aka information, is collected, analyzed, interpreted, and implemented. When we consider how to use data to drive instruction, it's best to use a data cycle such as this one to guide our practices. For those of you participating in reading academies, this cycle may look familiar as it is used there as well. Let's view the data cycle and its components together. As you view the data cycle, note there are 4 stages within it used in conjunction with assessment results. Stage 1 asks us to collect data that measures student performance and/or mastery of objectives. Stage 2 asks us to analyze data from those results. In other words, how are you making meaning of it? Stage 3 asks us to interpret the data to inform instruction so that it supports student success. Another way to think about this is considering what your next steps might be before implementing them into your instruction. Stage 4 asks us to plan and implement instruction that meets the needs of our students. As you can see, the data cycle is an iterative process, meaning that we go through it from beginning to end over and over again. We can move through the data cycle in a moment's time to make quick decisions, or move through it slower as we pause and reflect on which steps should be taken next. Here's an example of how you can track your movement through the data cycle on your own. We've provided a blank data cycle diagram found in the Facilitator's Guide, or you can simply write down the 4 stages and fill them in. As you practice this with your teaching team or on your own, remember to take a moment and reflect on which type of data you want to analyze. Will it be data from screening results or data from observations that you've made? I'll provide a quick example for how I moved through the data cycle one particular day when I was teaching in kindergarten. Once we're done with the example, you can prepare to pause the video. For this example, you can also follow along the stages in the mini data cycle located at the top right corner. One day, during center time in my kindergarten classroom, I had noticed one student in particular was moving through a CBC card game rather quickly and efficiently. His goal was to match the word from a deck of cards to the picture shown, and then he was instructed to write the word down. First, I noticed he was very successful when using the IP word family cards and had successfully matched the word to the image. He also wrote it down for himself. If I was moving through the data cycle, this would be an example of me being in stage 1, collecting data, the green stage. Simply put, my observation was collected data. To set myself to move to stage 2, the red stage, which is analyzing data, I thought to myself, This child must have experience with CVC words. He hasn't gotten one wrong yet. There I was, making meaning of my observation. Then in stage 3, the yellow stage, I considered how I might challenge this student. I thought to myself, were they ready for letter blends? In stage 4, the blue stage, I planned and implemented, meaning that I brought out letter blend cards to use with the CVC card game. From there, I noticed the student was very familiar with the SH blend. However, they did need some support when it came to the DR blend. I hope that example was helpful. Now you'll feel prepared to move through the data cycle stages as you reflect on a moment that's similar to mine. You can press pause here and resume whenever you're ready. We also encourage you to use this Q&A break to address any questions you or your team might have. Resume the video again when you're ready.
We're going to shift directions for a moment. Let's quickly take a look at the background for the change in our diagnostic tools for kindergarten and why it is important. TX-KEA and M-Class Texas are the two tools the Commissioner has named to meet the statute requirement. Today's presentation is focusing on TX-KEA.
HB3 requires that all kindergarten students be administered a literacy screener during the beginning of the year assessment. HB3 also requires that LEAs notify parents of the results in writing within 60 days of administering the literacy tool. There are other requirements for kindergarten surrounding PEEMS submissions for the Early Reading Indicator Code and Dyslexia Code in PEEMS. The Early Reading Indicator Code is entered twice, once in the fall and then again in the summer. The Dyslexia Screener is required to be administered by the end of the year for all kindergarten students. The Dyslexia Code in PEEMS is entered during the summer submission window. Each local education agency is responsible for setting and communicating the annual schedule for BOY, MOY, and EOY assessment windows. Holidays, parent-teacher conference days, and other campus events need to be taken into consideration while scheduling. Emphasizing the importance of formative diagnostic practices throughout the year to teachers is key to understanding their overall role of using data to inform their instruction. The PEEMS and ECDS submissions should also be taken into consideration. Let's also consider some best practices that will inform instruction continuously so that students are receiving appropriate interventions and support that are needed to close any learning gaps. During the beginning of the year, other domains need to be administered, as well as formative data collected to have a complete picture of the whole child. Middle of the year is a great checkpoint to see if students that scored in the monitor range have made gains toward being on track, as well as students that are in need of support. Teachers can gather and look at data to measure if they are making progress, as well as closing any gaps. Again, formative data from classroom activities will complete the picture of the whole child. This process is continuous and important at the end of the year as well.
As noted in the last slide, HB3 requires local education agencies to notify parents of the results of the screener in writing within 60 days of the administration of the tool. A parent report can be generated in TX-KEA for teachers to share with parents. The link for these directions is at the bottom of the slide and in the resource page at the end of the PowerPoint. The report defines the terms on track, monitor, and support for the parents. It gives the composite score, and the individual components of the literacy screener are color-coded to match the results of the student's performance measure levels. A link or the QR code takes parents to activities based on the data to support the student with activities for them to use at home. An exciting feature this year is that reports also have the capability of being printed in Spanish, even if the student is assessed in English. You can determine by the language of the home as to which one to send home. Now let's take a look at some background information for the TX-KEA Literacy Screener. An effective literacy screener provides real-time information that identifies students' strengths and needs to inform instruction and close learning gaps. The TX-KEA Literacy Screener on the CLI Engage platform is ready for you to administer to your students. The screener will take 5 to 7 minutes per child. It will designate students as on track, monitor, or need support. A parent report will provide the written report required by HB3. And most importantly, teachers can begin to provide interventions to students that fall in the monitor or in need of support areas. TEA and CLI Engage did conduct a pilot of the TX-KEA Literacy Screener from January through March of 2020. We had 124 local education agencies participate. ISDs and charter schools were represented. Teachers that participated were given a short training with specific step-by-step instructions on how to navigate CLI Engage and administer the literacy screener. Each teacher then administered the screener to 5 students. Over 600 teachers filled out and returned a survey about the screener once they completed administering it. Teachers overwhelmingly reported they found the administration of the tool was easy to administer. So let's begin to look step by step at how to administer the literacy screener. The 3 domains of language and communication, emergent literacy reading, and emergent literacy writing are all included on the screener. These 3 domains are predictive of a child being on track, monitor, or need support in literacy.
The TX-KEA Screener is available in Spanish as well. As you can see, Lenguaje y Comunicación and Alfabetismo will also be part of the Spanish Literacy Screener.
Let's get started with CLI Engage and exploring TX-KEA. This is a good time for you to pause the presentation and open the CLI Engage website in order for you to follow along with the actual website. www.cliengage.org is the address you need to put into your browser. Here's a picture of what the login looks like. Remember, if you are not participating with the CLI Engage website open, you can simply follow along for now and explore later. Just like your car, the dashboard in CLI Engage gives you multiple information and data points, including resources and training. Once you log into CLI Engage, your personalized dashboard will come up. We are going to focus today on the red banner for screening, progress monitoring, and observation, as that is where the TX-KEA Literacy Screener and the assessment practice area are housed. Please note that your dashboard may not look exactly like this one, as each dashboard is tailored to individual account needs. This arrow points out where you will find system updates as well as notices and announcements on the right-hand side of the page. These tabs are worth checking for information each time you open it up. The assessment practice area will allow you to view the TX-KEA assessment, to become familiar with the tool, and you will also be able to practice administering the tool. Once you click on the assessment practice area, you will see this page. The practice area for the TX-KEA Literacy Screener is on this screen. Again, your page may not be identical to this, as each dashboard is tailored to individual needs. Now you can see exactly what the Literacy Screener will look like and interact with the tool to familiarize yourself with how it works. This shows the page for the English screener in the assessment practice area. The Literacy Screener includes the first 3 subtests on the platform: Vocabulary 1, Letter Names, and Spelling 1. Each subtest will have an individual score for progress monitoring purposes for districts that are using TX-KEA for that purpose as well. The KEA literacy score that appears right after the 3 subtests will give you a composite score for the literacy screener. When you click the button circled in red at the top of your page, it will switch to the Spanish version of the tool. The Spanish subtests are in the same order, and will also give a composite score for the literacy screener. To get back to the English subtest, click the button circled in red, click to assess in English. The assessment practice area in both languages will have multiple demo students in the roster for you to use as you acquaint yourself with the literacy screener. The literacy screener is the first 3 subtests in the queue. You initiate each subtest by clicking on the launch button, which is a black rectangle with a white arrow. The 3 launch buttons for Demo 1 are circled in red. The first 2 subtests, vocabulary and letter names, are administered one-to-one to students on the computer. The spelling subtest is given in small groups with paper and pencil, and then the teacher enters the score by clicking on the button in the spelling column. A composite score will come up in the assessment practice area also. You are now ready to begin practicing the assessment by going through it. The practice area is identical to the screener you will give to students. The directions for each subtest are at the beginning of each subtest. All items will be available as you go through it. The purpose of the practice area is for you to become familiar with the assessment, not to administer it to a student on this practice platform. This screenshot shows how to launch each subtest separately by clicking on the black box with the white arrow. You will launch the vocabulary, complete the assessment, and then launch letter knowledge. There is a process called multi-launch that allows you to link the 2 subtests so they run concurrently. In order to multi-launch the 2 subtests given online, click each subtest box at the top so that they are both highlighted in blue. Begin administering both subtests by clicking on the multi-launch button that is circled in red. It is a black square with an arrow and a plus sign. The subtest will then multi-launch the 2 subtests back to back so that they run that way. You will be able to administer both subtests without having to stop and download the second subtest. It saves time. Offline assessment is a tool for you to use so that you can administer the screener and not worry about an internet connection failing. The link takes you step by step in how to set it up. It is very important that you not wait until the day you want to pull students for the screener to set this up. It is key that you complete this offline process during non-peak internet hours, which would be after school, in the evening, or on the weekend. You will create a password during this process as well. Be sure to write it down because you will need it to upload student scores back into the system after you finish administering the tool to students during school hours. Let's move on to administering the screener and the tools that will help you. Once you are familiar with the instrument in the practice assessment area, you will prepare for administering the TX-KEA Literacy Screener to your students. This section will discuss the types of student responses for each student, the materials that are needed for spelling and vocabulary, and where to locate them on the platform. The TX-KEA Literacy Screener has 3 different response types: teacher recorded, student selected, and student written. The English and Spanish TX-KEA Literacy Screeners use the same 3 subtests: vocabulary, spelling, and letter knowledge. Some differences between these subtests are based on how children answered items when TX-KEA was first piloted. For example, in the letter naming Spanish subtest, it was found that multiple choice items gave the best understanding of children's skills from lower to higher ability. But in English, free response was the best format in order to fully capture children's skills. Let's look at each one individually. The vocabulary subtest is teacher recorded, as is the English letter knowledge subtest. The teacher should sit by the student and score what the student says. There are 2 ways to do this. You can use the mouse and click the purple or blue button on the screen. Purple on the right is correct, and blue on the left is incorrect. This can be done by hitting the arrow keys on the bottom right of your keyboard as well. Remember, in both cases, right arrow or purple button is clicked if the student gives the correct answer, and the left arrow or blue button is clicked if the student gives an incorrect answer. The Spanish letter knowledge subtest is student selected. The student will need headphones for the prompts. 4 letters will appear on the screen, and the student will touch the letter. If you have a touchscreen computer, then the student will make his or her choice, and the answer will be recorded automatically. The teacher should sit close by the student in order to monitor and prompt if necessary. If you do not have access to a touchscreen computer, then the teacher will sit beside the student and click with the mouse on the student's first choice. The emergent literacy writing domain is measured through the spelling subtest. The student response is in written form and administered in a small group. You may have to administer one-to-one with some students. These are the forms the students use to write the words. Now that we've talked about the student response, let's look at the scoring guidelines that are available for teachers to score the responses correctly. In the lower right corner of your dashboard, the New and Featured section has a Kindergarten Literacy Screener button. Click on it to get to the TX-KEA Literacy Screener information. The link to the scoring guidelines is on the right. This group of links also contains video demonstrations of administering Literacy Screener subtest. This page also has the sign up for access to CLI Engage. Be sure to check with your district as to how you should sign up. They could already be in contact with CLI Engage and have created accounts for you that link to the district. The vocabulary scoring guide gives you the picture, acceptable prompts, and acceptable responses for you to administer and score the subtest correctly. Before we discuss the spelling scoring, we suggest you pause the presentation at this point to go into the assessment practice area and go through the letter knowledge and vocabulary subtests in the assessment practice area. Now it is time to look at the emergent literacy writing domain, which is measured through the spelling subtest. The directions, scoring instruction, and letter approximations all have explicit instructions. Spelling scoring guidelines give you a script to administer the subtest and acceptable letter approximation. All of the materials are included for beginning, middle, and end of year in English and in Spanish. Scoring the spelling subtest is critical for you to understand. Spelling is a norm reference test, and the benchmark cutoff scores were determined by scoring the tool in a specific way. It is important for you to get a true picture of the child's ability to score it the same way. As we go through this section, keep in mind that this subtest also offers you the opportunity to collect formative data for each of your students. Directions for the first 2 words are in this slide. We're going to look at some specific examples and how to score them. Let's look at possible answers for number 1, hat, and how each is scored. The spelling subtest is norm reference based on research, so scoring it correctly is critical. 1 point is given for each letter that the student writes in the correct order. It does not matter if the letters are upper or lowercase. Acceptable letter approximation guidelines are part of the link in the resource section. Number 1 shows all 3 letters in order. The teacher would click on boxes 1, 2, and 3 because all of these have the following. The first letter of the word is a recognizable H. The second letter of the word is a recognizable A. The third letter of the word is a recognizable T. If the child writes HA, the teacher would click on boxes 1 and 2. Row 3 shows the beginning and ending sounds in the word hat. This is scored a 1 because H is recognizable and in the right order. The second letter of the word hat is not T, so the letter T is not in order. Remember that this may score a 1, but it gives the teacher information that the child knows the beginning and ending consonant sounds. The 4th row shows the letters in reverse order. This score is 1 because the only letter that is in the correct order and is the second letter, and that is the A. The last row receives a 0 because the 2 correct letters are not in the correct order of the whole word. No matter the score, all of this is great formative assessment for you as a teacher to build on. Let's take a few minutes to score this mock spelling test that is in the facilitation guide. We just went through different responses for hat. Let's do this one together. The first letter of the word is a recognizable H, and it can be uppercase, lowercase, or a reversal. The second letter of the word is a recognizable A. The third letter is a recognizable T. All three of these boxes would be checked. The student would score 3 points. Now pause the presentation and score the mock spelling test and the spelling subtest in the literacy screener. Welcome back. Let's go over the words together. The student response for the word pot is the letters P and T. You would check the box that the P is recognizable and in the right order. The second letter is not an O, so you cannot check this box. There is no third letter, so the letter T is not in the correct order. This student response would be scored as 1. The student response for log is GOL. A teacher would only check box number 2. The O is recognizable and in the right order. The student would receive a score of 1. The student response for fin is FEN. Box 1 would be checked because it is a recognizable F and in the right order. The second box would not be checked, and box 3 would be checked because the response from the student is a recognizable N and it is in the correct order. Last one. The student response for run is RON. The R is recognizable and in the right order. The second letter is not recognizable U, so you cannot check box number 2. The third letter is a recognizable N, so box 3 is checked. The total score for this student response would be 9, and that is on track. In fact, it is well above grade expectations because 2 is the benchmark for this subtest. The expectation for an incoming kindergarten student is to know the beginning consonants for 2 CVC words. There will be kindergarten students in Texas that write all 5 of these words correctly. This is information a teacher can use to provide activities and centers that will challenge these students. Remember, the purpose of the literacy screener is to provide teachers with meaningful information to inform instruction for all students. Now that you're familiar with the tool through the practice assessment area, and once you have printed out all the materials you will need, you are ready to administer the TX-KEA Literacy Screener to your students. Click the button on your dashboard to access the TX-KEA assessment area. Remember, your dashboard is unique to you, so it may not look exactly like the one in the slide. Once you click on the TX-KEA button, a box with your name and kindergarten class will be in your queue. The 3 required subtests are identical to the subtests in the assessment practice area. The screener is the first section of the TX-KEA full instrument and is followed by the composite score for all 3 subtests. The class view is exactly the same as the assessment practice area, but it will have your students' names in the roster. The Spanish-English Assess button is at the top, and the launch buttons for each subtest are circled in red as well. The last slide of the subtest will be the summary page. It will provide you with the student name, the responses from the subtest, a comment box for you to make any notes that you may want to make about the administration. For example, if the student gave the word tool instead of wrench, you could note that in the comments. Invalidate this assessment is available as well. This is the one chance you have to do this. If you made mistakes while scoring or you recorded on the wrong student page, you can invalidate this subtest and start over. It is very important that you wait a few days to re-administer the subtest to the student for results to be valid. If all is correct, you will click Done and move on to another subtest. Once you click Done on the summary sheet, you still have access to the information from the summary sheet. On the student view, click on the score that is now in that column. The summary sheet of the student's answers will pop up. You can also add comments about the session at this time. As you can see on the slide, the comment button has now moved to the top of the summary page. We'll talk about data-informed interventions later in this presentation. If the data indicates interventions are necessary, this is a good place to document any intervention you use and data you collect. We encourage you to use this question and answer break to address any questions your team might have. Resume the video when you are ready.
Next, we will recap all of the prerequisites that are required prior to the administration and the requirements of the actual administration of the TX-KEA Screener to students. Let's go over every step you need to complete the TX-KEA Screener. First, you need to access your CLI Engage account. Next, you'll open the assessment practice area on your dashboard. Then you can practice the screener in the assessment practice area to become familiar with the tool. Finally, you can get ready to administer the assessment by printing out documents needed for the vocabulary and spelling portion. Keep in mind, CLI Engage has recently updated their guidance and training for remote assessments too. You'll want to keep an eye out for those as you prepare to screen students no matter which way you do it. As a reminder, the Literacy Screener is designed to provide data to inform instruction so teachers can provide supplemental instruction and interventions to close learning gaps and support student success. That said, we want to be very clear that teachers should absolutely collect formative data for literacy during the beginning of the year and administer any other beginning of year domains to all students. The focus of HB3 in our message is that data will provide teachers with information to use as they close learning gaps in early reading skills. Let's take a moment to connect back to the data cycle. The information we just reviewed with you are all excellent ways to collect data. Therefore, this reflects being in stage 1, the collect data stage of the cycle. Now that we've explored the many ways to collect data, let's review best practices regarding data sharing. While collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and implementing are important parts of the data cycle, it's also vital that we share our findings. As previously mentioned in my CBC card game example, many of us can move through the data cycle quickly and may not take the time to document or record our findings. However, it's important to consider which other people in our students' lives might benefit from receiving such important data, especially literacy screeners. Sharing student data is a lot like recipe sharing. Data is information that lists exactly what each student needs to be successful. It holds the ingredients, measurements, and instructions on how to support each student. Therefore, it's important that we share our data or recipes for success with people who are of most importance to each student, such as family members, administrators, and other support staff. For a moment, consider yourself a seasoned chef. How often would you need to write down what you do? How often would you look for directions? So much of what we would do after a while as chefs is instinctual. Well, the same thing happens in the classroom. After a while, the way that we work with children and use data to drive instruction becomes an internalized habit. But not all people that children meet in their early years will know what we know about them. Those people may not have all the recipes for success in working with that child. So it's important to take the time to share what we find. For example, what did you observe in the screener results? What did you do about that observation? Keep in mind, data sharing isn't just about student success. It's about telling the story of a whole person. Assessments can be a part of that storytelling regarding a student's growth in your classroom. In this section, we will cover best practices in relation to sharing meaningful data with families. Let's remember that communication is a two-way street. As educators, it's important to remember that while we may be the experts in early childhood education, we are not the experts in each individual child's life. In fact, it is a part of our professional standards to respect the experts that currently exist in children's lives, which are parents, caregivers, and other family members. Again, we're reminded of our professional standards from NAEYC, which state teachers learn with and from families, recognizing and drawing on families' expertise about their children for insight into curriculum, program development, and assessment. When communicating with families, it's always best to be friends. Try to be the following as much as possible: friendly, realistic, inquiring, empathetic, negotiable, dependable, and supportive. Always remember to use a friendly tone. Set realistic expectations for you, the family, and the child. Use your inquiry skills to remain curious, not judgmental, regarding what the family knows about their child. Remain empathetic to their needs. Be negotiable when discussing expectations. Use a dependable form of communication that works for both of you, and be supportive of all families and children. Let's practice for a moment to see how we can use the FRIENDS acronym. For this activity, you can hit pause and take a few moments to see if you can spot which communication style used the FRIENDS acronym. As I'm sure you can guess, the letter on the left did not use strength-based or friendly language. While it did provide families with the same message, they were worded very differently. This example provides explicit differences between two different communication styles. What's most important to understand is that how we'd like to communicate with families is a reflection of how we would like people to communicate with us. Remember to put yourself in the perspective of a family member who would be receiving this communication, and consider which language would appeal more to you while encouraging partnerships with teachers and families. Teachers using the TX-KEA Screener can share student scores with families. The parent report that teachers can generate will provide current student levels and suggest activities and resources for the family. Keep in mind, these reports are also available in Spanish if needed. This year, TX-KEA has updated their report feature, meaning family reports can be shared in the language the family needs, even if it differs from the language that the tool was administered in. For example, you can provide a Spanish family report even if the student was successfully screened in English. Let's now review benchmarks and database support resources within TX-KEA. Benchmarks provide information for us to gain a deeper understanding of each child's skill level. Having this information supports teachers in implementing and planning for data-driven instruction. Students will fall into one of these three areas to help teachers make sure that instruction meets every child where they are, not above or below their capabilities. Districts use benchmarking data to determine how best to support their school communities. Benchmarks provide information across a wide range of abilities for skills for each student. For example, a teacher could see that a student is in the monitor range according to the composite score given. Just so you know, 42 is the maximum score of the three. For example, in looking at the data, the teacher notices that the composite score for all three demo students. For the student who is labeled Child 1, she sees the composite score is on track. However, she also notices they are slightly in the monitoring zone when it comes to vocabulary. For the student labeled Child 2, she sees that their composite score is in the monitoring zone, even though they did very well on vocabulary. Lastly, the student labeled Child 3 has a composite score in the need support range, even though they did very well on spelling. It's important to use all this information to help you adjust your instruction. You can specifically see here in exactly which areas children need support or challenges. As you can see, there's a wide range so that you can reach kids functioning above and below grade level. Remember, just because a skill is being assessed doesn't mean they have to show mastery of it right away. Here are some effective ways that teachers use benchmarks to make sure instruction is at the right level for all students. They can determine the level a student is at, inform and differentiate instruction, and plan and provide interventions when necessary. As you can see, reports and benchmarks are excellent ways to analyze and interpret data that you've collected. Analyzing data happens when we make meaning of the results that we have. Remember, you can reflectively ask yourself, do these scores seem low for this student, or are they high? Which scores are the lowest and which might be the highest? You can also pause to interpret data here as well. This means considering what your next steps might be right before implementing new plans into your instruction. We encourage you to use this Q&A break to address any questions you or your team might have. Resume the video whenever you're ready.
Now that we have the data, let's look at what we do with it. As we saw earlier, the 3 literacy screener subtests will be combined to produce a composite score. Students who are on track are coded with green. This shows a student is where they are expected to be at the beginning of kindergarten. In fact, students will score well above the benchmark of 18. This is a great information for a teacher to have that will also help inform instruction to provide activities that will challenge a student that is performing above expectations. Yellow indicates a monitor designation that lets a teacher know a student is approaching benchmark but not quite there. Adjust your instruction to give Tier 1 and 2 supports for this student. Check for understanding. Ask probing questions. Monitor their play and centers to make sure they are picking up new concepts in order to close any gaps. If progress is not being made, direct interventions may be necessary. Red indicates a student is in need of support. These students should be provided direct interventions by the teacher to help close any gaps. Let's look at how to access interventions in TX-KEA based on data by clicking on the View Groups button at the top of the class page. Once you have clicked that button, students that have similar needs are grouped together under each of the headings. Here you see 5 students that need support or need to be monitored in the area of vocabulary. There are suggested interventions for this group of students that you can click on that will take you right to the intervention. This intervention, titled Picture Sort, includes a video of the lesson being taught to students, a scripted lesson plan, and the kindergarten TEKs that are being addressed. You can also search for interventions by skills. The Circle Activity Collection is under the blue banner on your dashboard. The teacher will click on the Circle Activity Collection. When the Circle Activity Collection opens up, the teacher has the option of choosing English or Spanish activities. This will take the teacher into the pre-KK site, and then they can click Find Activities at the top of the page. Teachers then choose the category they need and the appropriate grade level of the interventions. A list of interventions will come up. As a side note, the film symbol by the title of the intervention is indicative that there is a video. This is included of the intervention lesson. Be sure to keep track of the data from the interventions. Remember, you can go back to the subtest results page for each student and add the intervention and data into the comments section. Pause the presentation to give teachers time to explore the Circle Activity Collection. You can use the View Groups button in the assessment practice area, or get into the Circle activity collection through your dashboard. Remember, it is under the blue banner. Share it with each other what you have found.
Now we're going to review the Dyslexia Screener requirements for kindergarten. In addition to the components included within the screener, it is recommended that you also observe for the following student behaviors during reading tasks. These behaviors are automaticity, difficulty sounding out words left to right, guessing, self-correcting, inability to focus on reading, and avoidance behaviors. Defined as a universal measure administered to all students by qualified personnel to determine which students are at risk for learning difficulties, keep in mind, screening does not diagnose, but rather identifies predictive variables. You can think of these as your red flags. Screening is not a formal evaluation. It does not require parent consent. Students should not be rescreened for conditions or disabilities that have already been identified, meaning if a student has already been identified with dyslexia, they should not be rescreened. And should the screener indicate predictive variables for dyslexia, the teacher and campus support team should determine appropriate next steps, including supplemental instruction, further diagnostic assessment, or evaluation. A CLI Engage webinar specifically about the TX-KEA Screener will be available in January of 2021. The Dyslexia Screener should be administered during end-of-year assessment. We're near the end. Let's provide you with some links and resources you will need to administer the TX-KEA Literacy Screener. Here are a few links that will provide you with materials needed for the spelling and vocabulary subtests. These links also have videos of each subtask being administered to a student or group of students for you to view. You can also see screenshots of what is at the top of every page in the CLI Engage platform, showing you where you can create a help ticket. Be sure to select TX-KEA Literacy Screener under Type of Issue in your help ticket. We also welcome you to visit the Data-Driven Instruction in Early Childhood Education website to learn more about these professional learning opportunities. We encourage you to investigate our website as we are continually adding more information to it. You can find videos like these under the Best Practices and Professional Development section. We'd like to thank all CLI Engage personnel for their expertise in developing the TX-KEA Screener. We would also like to thank Jackie Porter, State Director of Early Childhood, for her vision and expertise throughout this endeavor. Thank you very much for joining us. If you have any questions, please email earlychildhoodeducation@tea.texas.gov. We look forward to hearing from you.